You look tired. Didn't sleep well?
I woke up about 3 o'clock
Ah,
and couldn't get back to sleep, so I just went for a walk and I
hmm.
sat outside your house and prayed for you for half an hour.
Oh, Lucas, bless you. Ah,
It's mostly just because I couldn't get to sleep, and
ah,
I'll just go down to Laurie's and I'll just sit there and pray.
ah,
Good.
thank you.
I was blessed by it. It was,
Well, you, you're making me cry. Ah, just getting old and sentimental.
that's right.
Ah,
That's fine.
I,
That's fine.
ah, my cynical wife said, about time.
Yeah.
Ah,
Yeah, it was good. I was praying a lot I was thinking if you were having another heart attack or something, or if you were dying, then just to know that how much God loves you. And I know that you do, but
yeah,
I don't know, just felt like I should sit there and pray for you for that.
my thoughts were going along with, um, I was awake about that time too.
Yeah.
We could have been praying together. Uh, and I started in memorize about going through my scripture, and I got up to the middle of John chapter 13, where Jesus said to his disciples, "Children, I'm with you for a little longer,
Mm.
but uh, in a little while you'll look for me, and like I told the Jews, where I'm going, you cannot come." And my thought was, Jesus, you didn't have to be so sort of, I don't know, melodramatic or uh, to put it into such a convoluted way.
Mm.
Uh, why did you do that? And then that thought that's been with me a lot lately, that uh, how does a man who is God communicate to other men about himself?
Yeah.
Oh, he couldn't just say, I'm going to die, because that
Yeah.
wasn't true. He couldn't die, he's God.
Mm.
And it's just so funny when you, I bet it's not funny. It's very, very serious, but it just, I was kind of getting into the mind of Christ and, and saying, all right, Lord, well, I can appreciate that. There's still a mystery. I still can't fully understand, but I can see that you're, on the one hand, trying to be totally true to fact, to reality,
Mm.
and the other hand, uh, your circumstances are so different because you're God incarnate. What you say has to be really guarded so that
Mm.
you are being truthful, but you're also being realistic. Anyway, uh, I was going along with that, and then it goes on and it says, I mean, it confirms it straight away. He said, set your troubled hearts at rest. Uh, you trust in God always, trust also in me.
Mm.
And there he's just saying, trust in God, trust in me. Uh, he is God speaking as a
Mm.
man and claiming the categories of God without it even, it's not even conscious. It's the subconscious part of Jesus speaking the truth as it is for him,
Mm.
trying to make it clear as truth to people who he loves and is embracing and drawing into himself, but whose full understanding is just so far ahead.
Mm.
Yet that we're going to have to learn so much when
Mm.
we get to heaven. But it came back after he talked about going away and they couldn't follow. And then he said, I give you a new commandment, love one another as I've loved you. And then it was, so how does Jesus love us?
Mm.
I mean, it's not just sentimental and on a human level. I was trying to, like, I can say quite, on one hand, I can say I love my wife, and that's in a fixed, you've made a union and you're committed and you want the best for her. But that's kind of two human beings entering into a covenant, a special covenant of marriage. But when we're supposed to love one another, how did Jesus love us?
Mm.
Uh, well, how did he? I mean, there's obviously, I still haven't got that one clear in my head at all. But the one thing I did get when I thought, all right, I love Lucas, no question. You're not family in the sense of like flesh and blood, but what do I mean when I say I love Lucas? Well, I think when Jesus loved his disciples, he wanted them to fully enter into his experience. And he took every opportunity to teach them and to encourage them and to try to turn their attention to the realities, the true realities, the eternal realities, so that they didn't fail to grasp the full significance of them being creatures made in the image of God, who are loved by God. Do you feel what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, but he didn't just sort of, he taught them that and taught them those ideas, but they also experienced that idea of being in union with God through their union with him as well.
I think they did. In John 3, he says, he told Nicodemus, we speak of what we know and we testify to what we've experienced, but none of you believe us. So there was some sort of the disciples were starting to get the magnitude of who Jesus was, I think, and understanding that there's a dimension missing from this life until you're born again, until the Spirit of God works. And I think the way we're to love one another is with that same I don't know, determination to use everything that you've got to help the other person fully enter into God's love. Anyway, these are the thoughts that I was thinking this morning.
Yeah. We should try and keep going with Matthew.
We should.
We got up to chapter 2, verse 13, I think. So we've just had
So, but I think we got up to verse 18, you said last time, that we'd start from verse 18.
Oh, okay.
Is
so we
that
mentioned that Jesus had gone, that Joseph had had a dream and he'd gone down to Egypt.
No, oh, mate, no, you might be right. It might be 13. Yeah, sorry.
After they had gone, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said to him, rise up, take the child and his mother and escape with them to Egypt. Stay there until I tell you. The Herod is going to search for the child to do away with him. So Joseph rose from sleep, taking mother and child by night. He went away with them to Egypt, and there he stayed till Herod's death. This was to fulfill what the Lord had declared through the prophet, I called my son out of Egypt.
Mm.
Herod saw how the astrologers had tricked him. He fell into a passion and gave orders for the massacre of all children in Bethlehem and its neighborhood of the age of 2 years or less, corresponding with the time he had ascertained from the astrologers. So the words spoken through Jeremiah as the prophet were fulfilled. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud laments. It was Rachel weeping for her children and refusing all consolation because they were no more. The time came that Herod died, and an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said to him, Rise up, take the child and his mother, and go with them to the land of Israel, for the men who threatened the child's life are dead. So he rose, took mother and child with him, and came to the land of Israel. Hearing, however, that Archelaus had succeeded his father Herod as king of Judea, he was afraid to go there, and being warned by a dream, he withdrew to the region of Galilee. There he settled in a town called Nazareth. This was to fulfill the words spoken through the prophets. He shall be called a Nazarene.
Ah,
So you get a picture again here of a Joseph who is swift to follow. Seems like immediately he has the dream and he just does what he's asked to do in the dream.
yeah,
And he's got a sensitivity to what is being told in dreams.
yeah,
Do we have some fairly tenuous quotes again from Matthew from the Old Testament? I called my
yeah,
son out of Egypt. A voice calling in, a voice was heard in Ramah, and then the other one is, he shall be called a Nazarene. It's similar to the other quotes that we've had.
yeah. The last one, he should be called a Nazarene. I don't think anybody has successfully found any place in the Old Testament where there's any suggestion of that.
Right.
So I don't know what that's about. There's
What's the picture that Matthew's trying to paint here? We don't get these stories from any of the other Gospels. Sort of the flight to Egypt and then back again. In Matthew's mind, that was important in the narrative of Jesus, I suppose, echoing the narrative of the people of Israel.
yeah, I have a feeling that, like, Luke, it seems to me, obviously got his information from Mary, and so he's got Mary's sort of side of the whole adventure, and Matthew got his story from Joseph, yeah, and that he's got, all the things that impressed Joseph. They were all part of what was in Joseph's his responsibility as a new husband to look after his family. These would be the things really clear in his mind.
How do you think
And
he
it
had
seems to
access
me,
to Joseph, though?
say again.
How do you think he had access to Joseph? Or is it Jesus' brothers that he talked with?
Got more. No, it was Joseph. The brothers weren't there yet. They came later.
So you
So,
think Matthew knows this through Jesus?
well, I think he probably talked with Joseph.
Before Joseph died.
Well, right. Yeah, you're right. Joseph died probably before Jesus started his ministry. So,
Because there's no mention of Joseph.
yeah, you're right. Later on, Joseph's not there. Well, it's definitely Joseph's story, it seems to me. And
which could have come through either Jesus or the brothers and sisters of Jesus.
it could have, I suppose. It would have been the family heritage. I mean, there's nothing particularly unusual about it. I mean, Herod acted in character. He was, at the end of his life, he was really suspicious and brutal.
Yeah.
In that year, 2000, what did we say? 7 years BC.
Yeah.
That's the year that he killed
It was probably 5 BC then, by then, wasn't it?
5 BC.
Killed the
Yeah,
children in 5 BC.
before he died.
Jesus born in 7, killed them in 5, he died in 4.
Yeah, right. Well, in that year, 5 BC, was the year he killed his two of his sons because he thought they were making an effort to take the throne too early before he died.
Mm.
And so he's in a pretty bloodthirsty mood, and
Paranoid, probably.
probably so. They say he died of a skin, or as he died, he had a skin disease that was horrible, and that he was in Jericho. Was it for treatment at some place where the springs was supposed to stop the itch or something? But anyway, yeah, it's all in character, and especially too that when was a threat to anyone in Israel, Egypt was the natural place to flee to flee to.
Yeah.
There was a huge population of Jews. They say over a million Jews lived in Alexandria, like one of the cities. So it would have been like an easy place to set up for Jacob. With would be welcome among Jewish communities, especially as a tradesman. So yeah, that's all just a natural part of life in those days. It was not an unusual thing. But what I thought was unusual was um, Joseph's
Yeah.
quick response to the dream. It's like he had the dream, woke up from the dream, and immediately packed up and moved. Well, a mother and child in the middle of the night, and yeah, and it says a lot too for Mary submitting and not arguing and accepting that her husband had had an authority, but I don't think, just blind authority, that she trusted Joseph to have a message from God that this was really essential for their safety.
Yeah.
There was that trust in the obedience. And probably very, very necessary, because in those days, communication was by there were no telegraphs and telephones and stuff. So
Yeah.
The soldiers could have been ordered to immediately set out, and they may well have just escaped within hours of the soldiers arriving. So it's one of those things where it happened, and it's only Matthew, isn't it, that gives the account of this whole episode. But later on, or in somewhere around about the year 200 or so, Origen, one of the great theologians from Egypt, answered a charge that was being laid by a pagan philosopher, Celsus, when we still have records of the reply from Origen. And one of the things that Celsus claimed was that Jesus had actually learned magic while he was staying in Egypt, and that he used that power to fool people into thinking that he was God.
Mm.
That was Celsus's explanation of Jesus' life.
Mm.
But how interesting it is, that the event of the escape into Egypt is there in history. And one side looks into it and sees the work of God, his hand on the life of Jesus to prepare him to save him from the evil in the world and let him have his ministry. And on the other side, they take the same fact of the stay in Egypt and try to find a way of making it into an explanation of his power that was making it not from God, but sort of insinuating that it's on the side of evil.
Yeah.
But the very fact that he uses the historical fact, it means that the historical fact stands clear.
That it was known. It was a known fact to
Yeah.
the detractors and to those who were on the side of Jesus. Yeah. Yeah, that's true. That is good, isn't it?
You couldn't deny it, so you had to re-explain it. And I think a lot of people do the same. Well, that's precisely what people have been doing with the story of Jesus ever since,
Yeah.
trying to find some way of not taking the Christian interpretation of it, putting all kinds of other interpretations there as though by any means whatsoever they wanted to stop the story, to hide the facts, to guard their rebellion and excuse themselves, not accepting the love of God and the salvation that came with Jesus 2,000 years ago.
Yeah. We're probably also not wanting to submit to that rule in their lives. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
But
everyone wants to
rebellion.
be loved. Well, I guess so. Maybe not everyone does want to be loved. I suppose it's about whether you want life on your own terms or on God's terms. And if you submit to
Precisely.
God's terms of lives, then you find love as a byproduct or at the heart of it.
Yep,
Is
exactly.
there any point we should make about Jesus going to Nazareth, or Joseph, sorry, taking the family to Nazareth?
Last night I read the story of Archelaus, or the death of Herod and Archelaus out of Josephus. And Herod at the last minute changed his will. He originally had Herod Antipas, the Herod of Galilee, as ruler of Judea, and then at the last minute he changed it, and so there was all this sort of uncertainty, and Archelaus, they had to wait for Rome to ratify the gift of Judea to Archelaus, and the citizens of the leading citizens of Jerusalem started. Archelaus gave in. There'd been a scuffle, more than a scuffle actually. Herod had put the Roman legionnaires' symbols in the temple, and that had caused a riot, and 40 young men had burned to death and leaders killed. And then the leading men of Jerusalem decided to use the opportunity to preach this new ruler and get the people that brought about that execution also executed.
Right.
And Achilles gave in, but then they kept asking for more, and they holed up in the temple, and eventually there were 3,000 of them in there, and they were obviously beginning, it seems to me they were beginning to work out if they could bring about a revolution.
Mm.
So Achilles sent the whole Roman soldiers army in Jerusalem to circle the temple and killed the whole 3,000 of them, butchered them.
Wow. What year was that, you know?
Well, that was the very year that he came to power,
So
when
like 4 BC or 3 BC?
it was
4.
for just before Passover. And he was brutal his whole reign through. And this is what Josephus is writing about, so that by the year 8, I think it was, he only reigned for nearly 10 years.
Right.
So what did that take us to?
6.
6.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's when the Romans decided to rule directly with a procurator rather than to have a king,
Yep.
a native. So again, Matthew was spot on in his description of Achilles and the way that the angel of the dream advised the family to move away from their home in Bethlehem near Jerusalem. So that move, yeah, it must have taken place not long after 4 BC, maybe 5 BC, to allow Jews to go backwards and forwards. So Jesus would have been a boy of around about 4 or 5 when he came back from Egypt up to Nazareth. And interesting, Nazareth is just over the border from Samaria. So Joseph still stayed as close as he could to his family roots when he settled the family in Nazareth.
So next section then, we get on to John the Baptist. Matthew doesn't give us any of the background of John the Baptist like Luke does.
No.
Probably because of that connection that Mary had, and Mary probably informed a lot of what Luke said, but the connection that Mary had with her cousin Elizabeth and that whole story of John the Baptist and Elizabeth and her husband Zachariah.
Yeah.
Last night when we were talking, you're talking about sort of reading and understanding Jesus' message from that apocalyptic sort of literature.
Yeah, yeah.
And as a bit of an introduction to John the Baptist, he kind of fits with that image or that picture, doesn't he? As a
Absolutely.
bit of apocalyptic
Yeah.
figure, the way that he styled himself like a prophet of old.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that. I just I think too late for me, but I'm just beginning to understand how serious and how popular the idea of the kingdom to come, of the Messiah turning up, the expectation that God's story or God's purposes, God's plans were going to be fulfilled imminently. There really was a spirit of expectation that, it's time for God to work. And I like the thought, like you mentioned, that John the Baptist really thought of himself as being part of that action taking place to fulfill that apocalyptic expectation. And, it was like he said, the kingdom of God is at hand. It's happening. Everybody get ready.
Do you think he would have been aware of that sort of apocalyptic intertestamental literature that you've been reading recently?
Oh, absolutely. No question whatsoever. In
Mm.
fact, I've been thinking about this. I know this is a little bit of speculation, but Matthew takes care to mention that he appeared wearing a
Camel skin,
camel hair coat
camel hair,
and
yeah.
this belt
Leather belt.
beating. Yeah. And that, like, I haven't got the references here, but like right back to Elijah, that's
Yeah.
the way Elijah dressed.
Yeah.
And when Saul was, who was it? No, the king, oh, can't remember, Ahaz. He sent some priests to inquire, some of his servants to inquire about, he had a child that was sick, and he sent his servants to inquire at a god, a pagan god, whether the servants on the way to the god, and sent them back and said, "What does Ahaz mean? Isn't there a God in Israel?" And he Elijah didn't give his name. He just sent the servants back with. He must have had huge authority. He just said, "Go on, get back to the king and tell him. Doesn't he know that there's that there's a God in Israel?" And then when the servants arrived back, Ahaz said, "What did he look like? What did the man look like?" And the servant said, "He was dressed in a coat of hair with a leather belt." And so that was kind of the uniform of a prophet from God. I mean, part of it obviously was the character and the power that he assumed and so on. But when it says, Matthew says, that's how John dressed, I'm thinking, John, you deliberately dressed in the way that prophets were expected, and you're deliberately identifying yourself with Elijah. And so I'm quite sure that John knew exactly what he was doing, that he'd grown up. There's a high expectation that, remember John's parents, Zechariah and Elizabeth, that from the Levites, they were very, very old when they had him. So in the natural course of events, he would have been left an orphan. And one of the things that the Essenes did, the group that had set up at the top of the Ottawa, and they found there the Dead Sea Scrolls, the literature from that community, and they were a section in the Jewish kind of religious population who had totally rejected the Pharisees and the Sadducees and the temple, and they were fully expected the final war with the priest of righteousness, and it's quite probable that Elijah might have been, John the Baptist might have been brought up by that community,
Right.
adopted into the community. And they were totally apocalyptic. All the writings that they found from them have all got this, apart from the copies of scripture, but they've got this interpretation of the coming war of righteousness.
Yep.
So, yes,
So
John the
we'd be-
Baptist was,
yeah. Oh, so I was going to say we'd
Uh,
be assuming that he's like in his mid to late 30s as well as Jesus. From what
yeah,
we
it would have been the same age Jesus.
So that means that, say,
Slightly older.
if his parents were sort of 60 when they had him or older, they could have potentially been dead by the time he was 15, 20
Yeah, or younger.
or younger.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
And
Finish that thought. I interrupted you.
I've forgotten what it was now. Oh yeah, I was going to say, and that expectation, that apocalyptic spirit that was across the whole of the land, the expectation, that's the only thing that could account for the great crowds that came to hear
Yeah.
John the Baptist.
Yep.
The dressing up, I know I've always felt there's no place for the theatrical,
Hmm.
when you're preaching the gospel. You try and make it as natural as possible. But I think John the Baptist was deliberately theatrical in dressing as a prophet. And what he was doing was like there'd been no prophet since Elijah,
Yeah.
400 years. And this was sort of one of the things that was part of this thought forms, this milieu of expectation
Hmm.
that God's got to speak again. There's got to come a prophet. So
We'll have
yeah,
to
just
jump in there, Laurie, because we're about to run out of time. But
oh,
that's
sorry.
going to stop any second. That's a good introduction to what we pick up with for John the Baptist next